Hello, and welcome to Voices for Mental Health, the podcast where we bring hope, inspiration, and real talk about mental well-being through the stories of everyday people, mental health peers, and expert voices in the field. I'm your host, Candace Schoner, and today I am joined by my co-host, Carrie Kerwick, and our guest today is Cindy Benezra, an accomplished author, speaker, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and survivor of sexual abuse. Cindy is passionate about bringing awareness to the impact of sexual trauma through meaningful conversations and systemic change. Her memoir, Under the Orange Blossom, is proof that we do not have to take on the victim role unless we allow ourselves to do so. Welcome, Cindy, to the podcast.
It's great being here. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
Well, we are delighted that you are here, and I know that you are going to provide our listeners with some wonderful, valuable information to help them.
Well, I hope so. If anything, I like to think that I kind of educate others on what it's like to be somebody who has gone through sexual abuse and the outcome of that and how you heal. So I like to think that I could bring some hope and some healing to some.
Well, absolutely. And of course, you did your book for that same purpose.
Right, exactly. I did, Under the Orange Blossoms. In fact, when I started out, it was really, because my daughter and I own an event company, and I really wanted to write a cookbook. And as I was writing the cookbook and going through my recipes, I was getting triggered through all the memories. And so I would start writing down, instead of the recipes on one hand, and then on the other book, it was sort of like all the traumatic events and things that helped me get through it. And when I was done sorting through all my family recipes and decorating tips, I recognized that that notepad where I had basically all the triggers that came out through those recipes, I thought, you know what, this is probably what I should be talking about, not the recipes. Maybe someday I'll get there, but it was really sort of like, this is the one that holds the most shame over me. And maybe we should be talking about these things.
Well, could you elaborate on those triggers with the cookbook? And you said the recipes, was it reminding of a scent? Was it the certain meal?
Oh, I love that, Candace. You know what? It's kind of interesting. I think when I know everybody could relate to this. When we have traumatic events or something, like I'm going to say a holiday, and just use a scenario. Maybe it's Christmas or, and maybe we're having cookies with cinnamon in them, and there's family around and some horrific fight breaks out or something, maybe something violent to you happens. Then we kind of carry that, maybe that cinnamon in that cookie, and later on it becomes a trigger and we don't even know why we do not like those cinnamon cookies. And that is sort of post-traumatic stress. That's also, sometimes you could even dissociate a little bit, like you're like, I don't know where I am in my body. And that is one of the things about trauma. And I think cooking, the recipes just reminded me of, like, I know what happened at 7, where it was memory, where I would go, I know what happened at 7, but still this is a fabulous recipe. Or I know what happened in our household at 10. And I think it was just sort of, instead of a timeline, it was a timeline of recipes where I just kind of was unable to, look back and go, oh, that was a difficult year for me, or that was a lovely year for me. And I have all these different things. So, we all have different timelines of something, it could be our shoes. I don't know what it is, but how do you feel about that?
So could you share with the audience what some of the key steps that have helped you sort of reclaim your power?
I think going through this experience when you have trauma, and especially sexual abuse, going through allowing myself time to unfold everything that happened. And I think it doesn't happen all at one time. I think when trauma in general, it comes in stages where we're only able to handle so much. I did when I was younger. I dissociated a lot because it was just so much. And actually, I forgot what had happened to me in the past. And when I became sexually active, I remembered and had recalled what had happened to me. And my dad's my perpetrator. So having a perpetrator in a household it's even stranger that you could actually blank out on big parts of your life. My dad was my perpetrator. And when I had all these memories come back in dreams, that's how I journaled. And when my journaling, that's where I was able to put back kind of like all the fragments of my life. And this became the book. So this is where I wrote the book from. And my father, at the end, when I came to the end of my journey, I sat down with my dad and asked him, like, why did he do these things? Why did he touch other people? What was he thinking? And I felt very betrayed and angry. And so it was interesting. He ended up talking about it in his 80s. And so I said, you know what? I think I'm going to write a book about this. So it's my journey, what it's like to live with a pedophile, how I healed, how I went on and had difficult relationships. And then my journey at the very end, there's a lot of healing tools. And those are the ones that people like to focus more because we like to focus on how to get through it and heal and practical tools. Has anybody here been in a similar situation where you've been sexually violated or compromised or where it felt uncomfortable? Or are you a victim of sexual abuse?
Neither myself or Carrie, I don't believe, has been.
No.
But I'm sure that there are a number of our listeners who have. In fact, we get comments from our listeners from time to time. We've had other people on the podcast talking about this because it's something that I think we need to take the uncomfortable conversation and make it a conversation. And I applaud you for your book, but I think it's amazing. You sounds like you talked to your father before you wrote the book.
I did. I had his consent in writing the book. The Q&A, I recorded all of that. That's not in the book. I really tried not to the point of the book is to bring education to others and then also give hope that you can come through, that there is a way through it. I mean, there is no magic wand through trauma. I think when we have trauma, I think there's a little part of that that has affected us, maybe has formed our opinion about life or things or whatever it may be. But I don't think you could come completely unscathed from trauma. That's my personal view. But you could find a place in your heart for healing. And I also believe that you could find a place where you recognize that you don't have a victim mentality, I guess you could say. And in that, there's a lot of freedom where you're not carrying somebody else's shame. It's not your shame to carry.
Well, as someone who has suffered a different trauma, I felt the same way of not taking on that victim role. And a lot of people try to perpetrate that onto you, knowing your story. And that was one of the difficult things in moving forward, to try to push that aside and just say, hey, I'm resilient. I'm not a victim, I'm resilient. And just to keep doing that step by step going forward. How did that play out for you?
It's not instantaneous, I have to say. It was through problem, kind of like looking at it almost like this is a problem, like it's stopping me relating to people because of this, or I have fears like this, and then kind of going through stepping stones of that. And then later on, where you do so much work, where you kind of you step into your own power. And I think that was unexpected. And then I was sort of like, why do I feel shame? Like, no. And that becomes a very transformative process where you go, this is your shame. Like, why am I holding your shame? And it just becomes almost kind of like an epiphany. And you really do step into your own skin and your own strength. And I think you reclaim back, it's a bad word for it, but I'm gonna say the loss or the thing that had happened to you. And when you step back into that, that is a very mighty place to be.
Did you have help during this time when you were, kind of reliving all this, the nightmare? I'm going to call it a nightmare because
No, actually, I didn't. So being a teenager, um, there's too much shame in it. And I have to say, my mother, I love my mother, um, but I think her world for when I came to her and told her what had happened, that means my mother might lose her house. She might lose her stability. And I know she didn't mean it when she said, "Why are you rocking the boat?" But I recognized at later, well, within that year, I thought, oh gosh, my mom does not like changes. She does not want to do this. So how do I live within, I'm stuck. Like, how do I survive in here? Because she doesn't want to compromise her lifestyle. So she took measures, to protect us. But for me as an individual, they were not good enough. And it was hard to, when you're young, to kind of coexist like that, kind of going, you're not protecting me enough. You're not doing enough. And so that brings a whole other level when you are really stuck like that.
you talk about, I think you said we, so did you have other siblings that were
Yeah,
also
I have a
abused?
sister, Sonia, and it was, you know, oh, she was just really shut down through the process. So I felt, so there's always someone who's a little bit squeakier, a little bit more willful, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that person takes on that role. That happened to be me.
And good for you. I'm curious what that conversation was like with your mother. It sounds like she believed you instantly when you told her what had happened or what was happening to you.
I think it was a moment of, ugh, do you both have children?
I do.
Not
You
your mother.
do.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to say, or it doesn't even matter if you have children, but there's something about when you know your child, like you know your significant other. You could read them with behind their back. And I think when it comes to a child, especially, so for me, I just could not buy it that she did not know what was happening because I could read everything about her. So I could not understand if you're raising a child and you're wiping her nose and you're doing all of these things. I did not understand. I'm like, you're the nosiest mom in the whole world. How could you not know this had happened? And why did you put your blinders on? So I was very mad. I felt a lot of levels of betrayal, going through that with, the people who take care of you as your protector. So I felt very betrayed. Yes, I carried a lot of that later on. But I think that was sort of like, that became their shame. And that was the process where I kind of go, no, 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 no. Like, this is not, I'm not going to hold space for these levels of shame. These are your levels, not mine. And I think that's when expressing them or working them out. I was really just finding time and sitting with my mom and saying, hey, I love you. I understand we're all flawed, but let me try to understand where you came from so that I could move on and kind of forgive. And then that was, to me, a really hard process, but that came with maturity and age.
Yeah, I can relate. My trauma came in the form of a father that was an alcoholic and was physically abusive to my mother, sometimes to us kids. And so, I kind of get the sense from you when you talked about your mother that, why didn't she protect you? I mean, I get it. That's kind of how I felt. In the beginning, I was like mostly angry with my father about his behavior. And then I realized she allowed it to happen. So I totally can relate from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you find a spot where you had some form of resolution in your heart around those feelings, or is that something that you still struggle with today?
I feel like I'm in therapy now. Good question. It is. You know, it is something I still struggle with. My mother died a couple years ago, and you know, you talk about forgiveness, and I don't know where you both of you stand on this, but I think I can forgive, but I can never forget. And I still have anger issues. What about
Yeah.
you?
I definitely have anger. It did take me a while to forgive, but the hardest part for me was to realizing that I needed to forgive, to recognize that there was forgiveness to be had and forgiveness to be given in my circumstance. And, you know, it was, and when things are still happening to you in your life, how do you move into that forgiveness mode? Yeah, so that was tough for me. Yeah.
That's actively going through those things. But that's a perfect example. Like it comes in stages, and it's like you're chipping away at this rock. And when you get to the next level, you're like, oh, I'm taking a break. This is a lot of work. And then you keep on going and keep on going. And that's why there's no magic pill, there's no magic bullet for going the process of trauma. And we also mature as we grow older and have greater depth and understanding. And in that, there becomes some form of resolution. But it sounds like both of you could relate a lot to carrying trauma. I'm sure, I don't know if you felt this way, but when you were going through it and you have therapy and you're going through the whole stages, you know, like of one stage, and you're like, okay, I'm done, I'm healed, yay. And then something else comes up and you're like, oh, I thought I was done with this. I thought I was done with this. How much longer is this going to take? How much talking can I possibly humanly do? And I thought that out of everything was the most frustrating thing.
Right, right. And you emphasize not taking on the victim role unless we allow ourselves to. And sometimes it's, for me, I feel like it's a daily choice. Wake up in the morning and say, I'm not the victim today. So can you elaborate on what that means to you?
I think in the process, it becomes a mind shift. So once we work different levels of our grief, our shame, betrayal, heartache, when you go through different stages of that, and kind of if it was like a sieve and you were pouring flour, and it's almost like you're shaking that flour out until you get to nothing. And that's what it felt like to me. And when I got to nothing, I just got to the sieve. I just looked down at the flour down below, like all those layers of fluffy flour down there. I thought, wow, that's my life, that's my brain, that's my emotion, all of that stuff that's in that bowl right now. But here I am, the sieve. And I think that's when I kind of looked at, like, you know what, I get to recreate my scenario. I get to recreate myself. I get to recreate who I am today and how I'd like to show up. And I remember consciously thinking, I felt very different going through so much therapy and through so much work, where I was able to redefine who I was and how I'd like to show up in the world, and look at my anger and recognize that my anger was the thing that was really kind of holding me back. And how do I release that anger became a completely different stage. I also recognize too that you could work on the process of forgiving. It doesn't mean like if you're forgiven for the action, but you can have real angry moments and still forgive. I could still go back and tap into that anger, but a lot of times I don't want to go there because it doesn't serve me. And I think that's when you recognize a lot at the end of your healing journey is that it just doesn't serve you. So what parts of that does serve you? And then you'll look at that and go, like, my strength, my voice, maybe it's my ability to be calm. Maybe it's, you could take whatever strengths that you look at, and those are the things that you redefine yourself. And you redefine yourself, your mindset is completely different. And you know what? If you want to hold on to your anger, hold on to your anger. That's okay. It's your journey. I think that's also part of it. No, I'm going to be mad. That's okay.
What were some of the biggest obstacles you faced on your healing journey?
Anger, rage. Rage, yes. Just, I would get to a healing. Like I've had so much different kinds of therapy. I've done alternative therapy and, oh boy, lots of conventional therapies. And I remember it felt like once I was getting right at a plateau where I thought, oh, yay, I'm done. I've never been affected by this. And then wham, I would get to an angry part and then I would look at it a little bit and then move on it. I think it was the anger that was really hard for me to let go. But what I felt though, is that the anger, I felt like in some ways on a cellular level, it had manifested in my body and that scared me.
Oh yeah, I've been there, done that for sure.
Me as well.
And I was going to ask how you expressed your anger, but I don't know if you want to go there or not.
Oh, are you willing to share? I'm willing to share.
You go first though. You're the guest.
I have to say, there was this therapy work that I really liked. It sounds ridiculous, but they called it anger work. Doesn't cost a penny, and you could do it in your own home. I would take a ping pong paddle, or I would take a tennis racket. I love the tennis racket. I would put it on the bed, plop pillows on there, and before I did that, I would actually focus on what I was angry about so that I kind of had a script. So we'll make something up. Oh, geez. I don't know. What can I talk about? I'm angry. Well, okay, this is a good one. I felt that my belief was because I had to work through so much, doing all this work delayed me socially. That was my belief at that time. So I felt that everybody else was floating on in life, but I was stunted because I had to figure out all this. I had trust issues with people, and I felt that it held me behind. So I would think about that, let it come up to the surface, and I take my tennis racket and I would beat the pillows with it and shout to the top of my lungs. And I have to say, I did this. I kind of put it on my calendar like a schedule. Like if you're going to take out the trash, this was like it was my anger work. And I put it and I would do that. I thought that was probably one of the mightiest little things I could do to release anger in a controlled environment.
I gotta say, I'm gonna call it pillow therapy because I have done that many times, not with a tennis racket, mostly with my fist. But I think it's a safer way to get some of that anger out. And certainly I've done my share of yelling.
So I have a question for you. Who or what played that crucial role in your healing? And do you have advice for any loved ones that are hoping to be able to support a survivor?
Yeah. First of all, for the person who has gone through sexual abuse, or I would have to say, when you do share with somebody, and I hope you do share with somebody, because not everybody shares. A lot of people keep it silent, and in that silence, it is absolute torture. You're almost like a prisoner of your own mind. So if you do find the strength to go and share, look at the people around you who feel safe enough. And sometimes it might not be a family member, it might be a friend or somebody you really don't even know well. But look at their character and share. And I think just the process of voicing it, expressing it, that is one release. And I think if you continue to practice that, it becomes a practice. And in there's a lot of relief and freedom in that. Other advice, I would also say that remember that you will get through it. Especially you have the willingness to do it. If this is not, if this is something that you're not seeking, then it'll probably remain. I think you have to be proactive in your journey to heal and have the willingness to get uncomfortable. This is messy, messy work, healing, and you have to put yourself in vulnerable situations, but find people that you can trust. And it's a hard process to find the right people to trust, but it might be just one person, and where they don't have a lot of judgment. But you could also tell them, please just don't hold. You could tell them what you want them to say. I don't want feedback. I just want you to listen. I don't want you to share with somebody else. And I think you have to put your boundaries on that.
Did you discover anything new about yourself when you were writing your memoir? And what was that?
Yes, I didn't know that I knew how to write. I was tragically horrible in English, but I felt so compelled to share my story that I thought, wow, you never know. It was just something I was pushed almost sort of like out of fear to do. But so yeah, I discovered that I could write, and I also recognized that I do have a voice. I just lost it in my journey.
Yeah, recognizing that we have a voice is so critical to healing and on our mental health journey. And I want to thank you so much, Cindy Benezra, for joining us today on this podcast. You have been a fabulous guest, and thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. And where can people quickly find your book?
At probably the easiest is on Amazon, and it's Under the Orange Blossoms. Or if you want to reach out, I have a blog and a newsletter. Subscribe to me, and that's www.cindytalks.com.
Thanks again, Cindy. And to all of our listeners out there, remember, you are not alone.